Talofa lava, everyone. Morena, wherever you are in the world. I think it's morning. No, it's not morning anymore. I'm just going to say afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me. And the sis here, I can't see your name. Okay, I'll edit that part out. But anyway, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm about to do a podcast with the Living Koko team. They are based in Melbourne and just do some incredible work. And I've been so excited to do this podcast. As a chocolate lover myself, as a craft chocolate lover, I appreciate Living Koko so much more as a brand because they use specific chocolate. And yeah, I'm excited to have you on. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's exciting to speak to you too. I've been listening to your other podcasts and getting excited and nervous. But yeah, it's wonderful to be here.
No, thank you so much. So before we start, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. I am an entrepreneur, but I'm also a multidisciplinary artist. I'm a Pacific dance teacher. I teach Polynesian movement. I am Samoan. My mother is from Vaiusu and my dad is from Vailima, so we're Samoan German. Grew up in New Zealand and spent a lot of time back home in Samoa too. I live in Melbourne. We have raised Living Koko for the last 6 years, and yeah, it's building and then going from strength to strength.
I love that, and I follow you very closely. I pay attention. You know, some stories I literally just go, but when it comes to Living Koko, I actually take time to watch. But tell us a bit about your experience in the recent show that Living Koko was part of. It just looks so exciting from the Instagram stories, and I'd love to hear more about it.
Yeah, sure. So we were really blessed to be given an opportunity from Pacific Trade and Invest to be part of the Fine Foods Expo here in Melbourne, and also from MDF, which is Marketing Development Facilities, which are based in Fiji. They gave us the opportunity to be part of the Melbourne International Coffee Expo. So it was huge. It was very humbling to put Samoa on the map and to be one of the very I think the only people there promoting Samoan foods, and especially our koko from Samoa, which is our national drink. I gotta say, when I first rocked up to set up our stall, I felt like a really small fish in a big pond. I was extremely nervous, and as I questioned a lot about whether I should be there and whether it was, our time and whether I knew enough to be there. But the way they placed us at Pacific Trade and Invest had placed us all, there were 8 stores from many different islands all together, and we all kind of supported each other in a really beautiful way, and it reminded me how even though our islands are very small, we're very mighty. We had such a great vibe and good energy there. And yeah, just those thoughts of doubt just disappeared. And yeah, we took it on, which was cool.
I love that. And I've just since living in Sydney, I've met people from just people in Sydney who have no idea that Tongans and Samoans and Pacific Islanders are different. They kind of just class us all as one. And they don't realize that we're that we're totally separate cultures. And so some of the things that I say is to describe us, I say we're different, but we are still very connected, if that makes sense. So I love that, your experience there. What was the inspiration behind Living Koko?
Oh, gosh, it's really hard. It's hard to pinpoint the exact time that brings you to this moment now. If you look right back, it could have been, I spent a lot of time in Samoa. I used to teach scuba diving at Le Langoto in Savaii. And every time I'd go back to Samoa, I kept seeing a lot of, homelessness or different challenges that we were facing within Apia, and also within our more vulnerable communities. And understanding that koko is, it is something that we can easily export. There's no duties when you're sending it out to Australia and New Zealand, not like coffee and other commodities. It was trying to find something that we could create a market for outside of Samoa. And, and then also be able to purchase directly from our subsistent farmers, from our ainga, from our family, and bring here. Yeah. So when we first started, I didn't even know how to make chocolate. Like, we were like, let's just start a chocolate business. Oh, I better YouTube this. So I'm a huge YouTuber and researcher online. And I definitely have an attitude of, I can pretty much do anything, unless it's like brain surgery. Like, don't get me doing that. But anything like that, you can pretty much look it up. So we did a lot of research on how to start a business, how to make chocolate, the science behind it. We built a lot of our machines. Chocolate making machines are extremely expensive, and I think there's a lot of island ingenuity within this business. And if you have a kind of can-do attitude, you can make it work. So my partner and I started Living Koko, just wanting to do something to give back to Samoa, to create markets for export, and to have a trade and not aid approach. I think we all grew up sending the remittances and still sending remittances back home to Samoa, which is such a beautiful part of our culture and supporting our families. But it's also to be able to activate something that helps with self-motivation back home, that, people can create their own little micro businesses. What we are back home is, we may be cash poor, a lot of us cash poor, but we're asset rich with our rich soils, our volcanic lands. You can just throw the mango seed out the window and it grows. We're really blessed in that way. So how do we use, and, that is what people are craving for in a Balangi society, the organic foods, or the nutrients, where a lot of our soils here in Australia are depleted because they've monocropped. We don't have that back home because of the way we farm. So, when we started Living Koko, it was like, well, how can we make sure that money goes back home and that we create this trade and not aid approach?
Yeah. When I think about it, I think, my parents are in excellent shape. They grew up in Samoa. A lot of my aunties and uncles, the generation that came over, not us who were born here in New Zealand, but like my parents, they've got great skin, they're just in good shape, really good for people in their 60s. And I think when I really think about it, the Samoan, not just Samoan, I'd say Pacific Island diet is actually quite organic and quite healthy and not as processed. So it's just, I think I need to start eating healthier now. But, I'm sure because sometimes I feel like I'm going off topic here, but I'm just thinking about how healthy our resources are. And yeah, you're right. Non-Pacifica people here in New Zealand, definitely there is a market for it. So it's just awesome that you've done it. What's the process behind making chocolate? Like, you've explained that it is quite a complicated process, but I'm just wondering, like, if you could get into detail. Not that I'm going to go start a chocolate business, but like, how complicated is it? Because it's just, I'm just wondering.
Yeah, sure. I'll take it from the seed. Hey, so you plant the seed. When you germinate the seed, you place it under like a moist cloth to germinate it. And then you plant it in a mulch, which is 50% made of the koko pod and 50% made of the coconut husk. Once the seedlings have reached for about 2 to 3 feet, then you plant them in the ground. You plant them under the shade of the coconut tree. And I always say that the coconut has like an auntie relationship with the koko. From supporting it in its birth, when the seeds germinate and become seedlings, and then also shading them and looking, which is what aunties do, hardcore shade sometimes, but shading them all throughout their life. It takes about 3.5 to 4 years for a tree to fruit. So quite a long time compared to, tomatoes can grow in a few months in a way, or within a year. So 3.5 years. And then when you harvest, you ferment the koko for 7 days, and then you sun dry it for 2 weeks. And that's to stop the germination process and allows your koko to be able to export. You have to get your cacao under, I think it's 5% moisture to be able to export. If it's anything over that, mold can start to appear within your seeds, within your beans, and then it just tastes off. Your chocolate tastes off, your koko Samoa tastes off. It's not good. So once we get it here, we roast. And roasting profile is kind of like coffee. You know, if you have a dark roast, you're roasting at a higher temperature for maybe a long period of time. And then you have lighter roasts to bring out the fruitier flavors within the cacao. So you roast and then you grind, or you winnow, which is removing the buttle, the skin off the koko. We use the skin for our teas. We have a tea range of cacao husk tea, but we use the bean to make the chocolate and the drinking cacao. We grind that. If we're making drinking cacao, we grind for 24 hours. If we're making koko Samoan, we grind for maybe 3 or 4 hours. But if we're making chocolate, we grind for 3 days. So it's a long process of grinding. And then once we finish that, we have to cure chocolate. So curing is sitting the slabs in containers for 1 to 2 months. Once it's cured, then you can temper. So tempering chocolate is taking chocolate from a high temperature of roughly, for our chocolate, because it's dark, has to be 50 degrees. And then you got to drop it really quickly to about 30 degrees. So, you know, when you see on those chocolate shows and they're spreading the chocolate out onto the board, onto like a marble tabletop, that's they're trying to temper the chocolate. So they push it on the marble tabletop to try and drop the temperature, and then they bring it back into the bowl because they want the temperature of the chocolate to be 30 degrees, roughly 30 degrees. So there's a huge science about it. So you can't have any moisture in the air. The moisture in the air has to be dry. The room temperature needs to be around 23 degrees. It's really hard to be tempering chocolate when there's a lot of humidity, because the crystals within the cacao butter can change a lot. They can change from like a shorter crystal to a longer crystal, and that means that am I having a Rain Man moment and just over explaining? I'm going to keep talking about it. Okay. It means that the cacao butter will start moving within your chocolate, and you know when you get the white streaks that come through chocolate, it's called a cacao bloom. It means that the cacao butters come to the surface. So to stop doing that, you need to temper your chocolate properly and then solidify it in between 13 and like 16 degrees. And if you get it into that temperature, it means that, you know, your chocolate has that nice shiny look at the top, and it means when you break it, it has that nice snap to it. And that's well-tempered chocolate. So, and fine chocolate. So there's a huge science behind it. You know, sometimes I feel like I'm still working the way my ancestors did. You know, I'm still reading the temperatures, looking out into the skyline to see, you know, if the clouds are coming, checking the weather patterns to make sure that, you know, it doesn't affect the way we make our chocolate.
Yeah. I've always understood, I love that, but I've always understood that there was quite a lengthy process behind making craft chocolate, which is why I'm happy to pay whatever, you know, the cost, because I bought craft chocolate the other day, and one of my mates was like, Tima, what is it with you and these overpriced chocolates? And I was like, you know, there's a difference. Like you can just really taste the difference. I don't feel like I'm having a sugar crash after I have craft chocolate. And I want to spread that message. I want people to get into craft chocolate a lot more. I'm yet to purchase Living Koko, but I will straight after this. But could you please explain to us, and just for those who are listening, could you just explain to us the difference between craft chocolate and just everyday chocolate that you can access in the supermarkets?
Yeah, sure. There's a lot of differences. The everyday chocolates in the supermarkets have a lot of sugar in it to start with, and aren't made from the cacao bean. So the cacao bean has a lot of cacao butter in it, so all the nutrients are in there. And 100 grams of koko a day is what a woman needs for magnesium, her magnesium intake. Not that we would have like 100 grams of chocolate, dark chocolate a day, because we get it from other vegetables and fruit and whatever, but like our 100-gram bars is what we need for magnesium. The stuff you get in the supermarket doesn't have that. It's packed full of sugar, which is what makes it really addictive. Not only that, but the cacao that they use is usually from plantations in the western parts of Africa, or places where they don't have food sovereignty. There's a lot of child slavery happening there. There are thousands upon thousands of kids that are working in cacao plantations overseas, that are stolen from their families or bought off their families. So in really dire, terrible situations, promised schooling or promised, wonderful things, and then taking onto cacao plantations, working there, and then going into other different trades, the sex trade, things like that. So it's a really terrible space. And so that makes the chocolate extremely cheap, because the farmers are having very cheap slave labor. Also, with some chocolate brands, they'll use the cacao powder, but the cacao powder it's cocoa, but they've removed the cocoa butter from it. So they use cacao butter powder, and then they'll add like a vegetable oil or just a cheaper oil into it, that, has less nutrients, it isn't good for you, and again, quite addictive too. So, they say dark chocolate is a superfood, and it is. It is actually something that we should be having every day. And roughly 19 grams is a good serving of dark chocolate. But that's if a lot of the supermarket brands is not the kind of dark chocolate you should be having. That's packed with a lot of things that just, it's not a superfood.
Yeah, and that's pretty heartbreaking to hear. And thank you for sharing that, because that's just things that we don't, that's just some information that we don't get access to for us everyday people who aren't in that industry. But I do follow a lot of chocolate, not a lot, just like one. I do follow a chocolate journalist, and she's exposed a lot of brands. I won't mention any brands in particular, but they are in the supermarkets. But she's exposed a lot of brands who tend to greenwash a lot of their chocolate brands and try and market it in a way where it's been ethically curated or ethically made, but in reality it isn't. They're really just using everyday overly processed cacao powder, or not even that, like more cocoa powder. So is that something that were you aware of that before you came into the chocolate industry, or is this quite new for you as well?
Yeah, I was aware of it. I spent some time in Africa. My sister lives in Botswana, and I spent a bit of time in Africa and seeing, there are cacao farmers there that are getting less than $1 a day for their cocoa, and they don't get paid for it until it lands in Europe. So, imagine working your whole life, taking your whole harvest, putting it on a random, like a truck that's heading out, and not knowing whether you're going to get paid or not. Some of those exports get lost along the way, and then those farmers get absolutely nothing. And these are people that have had cacao farms for, 50 to 80 years, a long time. That's a business. That's a family business that goes through generations. If I had a family business that had gone for 50 years, I'd be living in Turak. I'd be living in some fancy ass house, but they're not. Like, they don't have food sovereignty, so they don't have, the power of the money power of their commodity is at the marketing and at the consumer end. It's at the end where they're making the chocolate and selling the chocolate. It's not actually with the indigenous people. And I think that's really important. It's something that they are starting to latch on to in these countries, and empowering themselves to speak up more about it. And I think the visibility of other countries showing that they can have food sovereignty, that you can dictate what your cocoa is worth. It's not for some foreigner to come into your land and tell you what it's worth. You can decide. I think, especially for us back home in the islands, it's really important to be activating our custodial lands in different ways. You never know, and you see it here in Australia, you never know when the government is just going to take your land off you. as they have with the Indigenous mob here. Like they'll sign something and say, yep, it's yours, we're giving it back. And then, everyone's dealing with COVID and other things, and they're taking it off and fracking these custodial lands. So, I always have that concern back home. If we're not activating our lands in certain ways, they're just seen as, to foreign investment, it's just seen as resources. We've all grown up learning about different mountains and streams, and we know the names. We know of, our ancestors that have grown up there. Their bodies are now nourishing a lot of the vegetation around. But we also know, we know the name of the mountain because that mountain was in love with the other mountain, and all those, legends or creation stories. And having these stories within our lives makes you feel attached to these, to nature, makes you feel like you're connected because they're all part of your growing up stories. Where in a lot of spaces like Western spaces, they don't necessarily have those stories that connect them back to nature because they're so displaced from their own lands. So when they see a mountain, they see it as, some people will see it as a commodity. It's a resource it's something to sell. But, we wouldn't sell that mountain because we know that mountain's history and story. Yeah.
I'm sure that, when you are purchasing cacao or koko from such a balangi, when you are purchasing koko from farmers and back home in Samoa, how does that impact them? Like, I understand it must be heartwarming for them, but what's that feeling like for you and also for them? Like, I guess I want to know more about the interaction, the relationships that you have in Samoa and how that's impacted your business.
Yeah, sure. So we've been, when we started Living Koko, we went back to Samoa and just spent a lot of time building the relationships. You know what it's like back home, like, it's relationships, eh? No one's going to do business with you if they don't like you. We don't care how much money you got. But making sure that we met the right people, people that could help activate community. Also, we worked with WIBD, with Women in Business, for a while. And then we also moved and worked with Living Koko. So Living Koko is based in Nassau. And they are the main suppliers of Whitaker's Samoan chocolate. There's that, yeah. So that comes from Living Koko. Living Koko did a project a few years back. I can't remember the company that they did it with. Sorry. But they have an incredible post-harvesting processes, like infrastructure, the drying facilities, the fermentation facilities, and things like that. So that was probably the best place to start a lot of conversations of, if we want more koko, how do we bring some of those post-harvesting processes into one space to ensure the quality control happens? Because it's challenging when you're doing that within the village. There's so many other distractions at times and things that are taking away people's attention to the koko. And when it would get to Australia, we'd have other problems with quarantine and mold and things like that. So we really need to centralize these processes. So Living Koko does that. Living Koko did a program with the Samoan Chamber of Commerce, giving out free seedlings to anyone who wanted to cultivate cacao. They both did the same program, and that also helped boost the number of trees within Samoa producing. What we really didn't want to do was to increase the price of koko within Samoa. Samoa is one of the very few islands in the Pacific that consume koko, as much koko as we do. Like, we consume a lot of koko. It's our national drink. So I remember there was a time where the prices of koko went extremely high, and all my aunties called me and they were like, "It's you." I was like, "It can't be me." I'm like, "I just bought 200 kilos. You got shipments, you got truckloads going out. I've just got a small amount." But it was like, well, you need to figure this out. And luckily for us, Living Koko and Samoan Chamber of Commerce were doing that project. So it's been a number of years, 3.5 years. The trees have all grown, and we're blessed to be able to get that fruit from them now. We go home 2 to 3 times a year to connect with Rosie and Salimua Whai, to connect with our farmers, to bring back our products as well, to show what we're making, and just to understand the challenges that are happening back home. If there's price increases, or maybe not enough koko at times, or the harvest is taking a little longer than we would normally think, then it's at those times where you're on country that those conversations happen. They're not going to happen over the phone. They're going to happen over a 3 to 4 hour discussion and a few cups of koko. Yeah.
Well, so Whittaker's chocolate, that's the only chocolate that I really buy. I never buy anything else. I only ever buy Whittaker's because that's the best tasting chocolate. I'm going to stop buying it now if you tell me that if you can tell me that they get their koko from in an ethical way, if that's how they get their koko, then I'll keep buying it. Could you tell me if they do or do not?
Please tell me they do.
Please tell me they do.
I can vouch for the koko they get from Samoa.
Yeah.
It's definitely done in the ethical way. And for what I've seen, they're quite hands-on with their farmers. I would assume that they're doing that everywhere, in all the spaces that they get koko from. There are certifications and things like that out there. There's the Rainforest Alliance and things like that. But there's also companies I know of or chocolate companies that are certified that have child slave labor within their supply chain. So, sometimes these certifications aren't looking deep enough, or they don't have the, maybe enough connections or relationships there to really understand what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about, just listening to you speak, you talk about chocolate with such, koko and cacao with such passion. And I can only imagine how proud you would be displaying your chocolate at chocolate festivals and, what do you call them, chocolate shows or expos. Talk to us about that process, because I'm sure it's probably really hectic. What's that like when you've got our beautiful culture, the koko out there displayed for the world to see? It must be such a proud moment for you. So talk to us a little bit about that.
That's a really proud moment. And especially when, a lot of people don't know much about the Pacific Islands, even in Australia, so and they definitely don't know that, koko is in Samoa. They all think it's in, Peru, South America, and also Africa. But to know that, my family have been working with cacao for 4 or 5 generations. And not just as in making koko Samoa, but, my grandfather was the general manager of WesTech, and also the high chief of our district. So as he was activating our villages to grow koko, he was also buying it as a good price and helping export it all to Germany. When I'm given the opportunity to tell those stories at these expos, it is a really proud moment. It shows that, it puts us on, I feel it kind of puts us on the map in some ways. And I know there's lots of ways to put Samoa and our islands on the map, but in my small way that I can do it, it's a really humbling experience. And it is hectic. You're saying the same thing over and over and over again. And sometimes you gotta really figure out what this person wants to hear, what they're going to feel and connect with. And, you'll go down one story and then you can see their eyes glass over and you're like, okay, that's not the right story. So you go in another direction and then they're like, oh, bing, yeah, okay, I want to talk about that. And so, yeah, it's just trying to figure out, from a complete stranger what their interests are. And I think as Pacific Islanders, we're actually really good at that. Of reading a room, of walking into a space and seeing who needs ipuki, how do we serve this space and we're also very I think very good at reading people's eyes and seeing like the small little gestures of like, yep, they're bored. I'm going to move on with something else. So yeah, it's a great experience, and has definitely taught a lot of us how to pitch. You know, they talk about, you know, your 11-second elevator pitch. If someone says, what's your business and blah, 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 you definitely fine tune it while you're at these events.
Man, yeah, no, I'm just wondering, like, I mean, for me, I'm always so proud to talk about Samoan culture, and I hardly ever do it though. Yesterday I was at my best friend's wedding and I did a Samoan siva, and I was nervous as about it, but I was just so proud at the same time. You know, usually I don't really smile that much in public, or like when I'm doing a siva in a group, but when I was by myself, it was just a proud moment wearing that tuinga. And so that's why I wanted to ask you, because it must be such a proud moment for you, you know, displaying our culture out there for the world and showing them that we're not just a holiday and, you know, a tourist destination. We actually have some great resources on our island, which is something that I know I'm definitely proud of. When relatives go to Samoa and they come back with like a box or a chili bin full of like freshly made luau and galo and like, you know, koko. So yeah, that's why I wanted to ask that question. How can we as a community, how can we as a Pacifica community get behind Living Koko and really show our support?
Well, you know, there's the buying of the products, but just sharing our story. Even if you don't yourself like dark chocolate, but you have colleagues at work that like it, you know, talking about it, showing people our website, that's always good. You know, just supporting, following us online on social media. Yeah, talking about us in an uplifting way too. I think sometimes it's very easy to see spaces and have a desire for that, you know, a business within your life or an activation like that in your life. And instead of lifting that space up, sometimes we can very easily throw shade. And, you know, if someone wins, we all win. If I win, we all win. You know, I've always had that kind of mentality. So, you know, support Pacific businesses.
Yeah.
You know, there's what I was really proud of, especially at the Fine Food Expo, is, you know, there were all these, you know, Niue Vanilla, Tana Coffee, like there's all these Pacific businesses there that I know have done the hard yards to even get to that point to have a product to be on an international stage. But it's not just us standing there with our koko. Like it's not my story, it's mine and everyone else that this koko touches, you know. It's all the families where you support Living Koko. It's also, there's a flow-on effect, and that flow-on effect goes back to our people back home. Yeah.
Talk to us about a day in the life for you, because, you know, we've already talked about how hectic it can get at festivals, the lengthy process behind making chocolate. But now I would like to know a little bit about your day and what you get up to and how you structure your day to not only run such a successful business that makes a great impact on our home islands, but also, how do you fit everything in?
I'm going to sound a bit strange. Okay, so firstly, I run my month based on moon cycles. So I work really hard to be attuned to, you know, where I am within my personal cycle and then what's actually happening in moon spaces. I know there's times within the month that I'm definitely a no person, no get away from me person. And then there are times within my month that I'm just like, yes, I'm all about ideas and things like that. So I schedule a lot of my meetings that I know I need to be creative, come up with ideas, be inspirational and things like that in certain moon cycles, usually in a waning moon or a new moon. But and then for a normal day within that space, I try and get a lot of my work done before lunch. A lot of my meetings are done around 10 o'clock, 10, 11 o'clock. I really try and do that. Or I have two amazing people within our team that help that we've trained to make the chocolate now and send out the orders. So now I can, which is amazing, now I can focus on growing the business. Instead of constantly working in the business, I can work on the business, and, reach out, do those sales and things like that, the bigger picture stuff. So yeah, meetings before 12, bigger picture stuff, probably about 1 till 2. And then like 2 till 4, I do like a lot of my administration and things that don't take much creative headspace, but, paying bills, checking to our cash flow, things like that. Yeah.
When you say moon cycle, what does that mean? Like now I'm like, we're going to be talking about something completely different now. Forget chocolate. We're talking about moon cycles now. So when you say moon cycles, what does that mean?
Okay. So, you got your new moon, you've got your waning moon, you've got your waxing moon, you got your full moon, right? And a woman's cycle, like our menstrual cycle, so we're going moon cycles, we're talking like, when a lot of women's cycles, if we are eating clean, looking after our bodies, not on medication and things like that, they're usually sitting around the new moon or the full moon, which is when there's like a certain kind, for me, this is what I believe, certain kind of like gravitational forces that are happening within our bodies and on the planet. And that's when, there's a release of your period. So kind of like, okay, with permaculture is like the natural way of planting and understanding the different plants and things and how they're affecting a plant, and the natural ways of planting. There's like a certain week that is for new leafy greens. There's a week for root plants. There's a week for let me get this right. The week for leafy greens, week for root plants, week for supporting the full tree, and then there's also a week for looking after the soil. So if you're thinking about those 4 weeks, and then you put those 4 kinds of weeks within your cycle, if you're seen as the soil, like I see myself as the soil, on the 4th week, which is my menstrual week, I am doing everything to look after myself and my self-care. It's not a time for me to be out there promoting Living Koko, because it's really like more of a deep reflection time for me. So that's my soil time. The week before my soil is a time where I'm putting things to rest. So any ideas that I had in the new moon time, which is new leafy greens and permaculture, on the new moon time, so I go new moon, leafy green cultures. Next one is roots, so I'm putting in roots to these ideas. The 3rd week is I'm looking after the whole tree and like myself, the whole business, but I'm also putting things to rest. So I'm not creating anything new within this final week. And then there's my menstrual week as my soil, and I look after me. So I have this mapped out. In my own calendar, my own personal calendar. And so when people are like, can I do this? Can we do this? Can we do this? I'm like, no, actually I can't. That's my soils week. And I really need to reflect and look inwards for myself. I won't be good at being creative at that. You won't get me at my best. And then the week before that being my putting things to rest, like I find at that point, I'm definitely a no person. People will come with me an idea, and in my head I'm like, hell no, which could be a great idea, but it's just that for some reason that week I'm just not in the headspace for those kinds of thoughts. But it's always around the new moon where good intentions are coming through, and I'm feeling more positive that I plan those things. Yeah. So that's me.
I love that. I love that. I feel like that is such a good way of living for women. Not just women. I mean, anyone can live like that. But for me as a woman, I've never looked at life that way.
Oh, it's so good.
And
Bro,
like You know
calendar.
what? And actually, I used to work for a Māori health organisation, and in the Māori health organisation, a lot of Māori women, and they all practice maramataka. I don't know if you've heard of maramataka.
Yeah.
So they all practice maramataka, and me being one of the only Samoan girls in there, you know, I would say, oh, I'm feeling like really tired, and then they'll just say to me, you're probably due for your period, and then I'll say, huh, you know. And they'll be like, yeah, you probably are. You just need to take this time to just relax. That's why you're feeling quite drainy. So just relax. But, you know, as some, like, just as children of immigrants, we don't know how to rest, you know, it's really hard. Because for me, especially, I grew up with parents who work 2 jobs each and would never rest. And they don't value resting. Resting to them is lazy, which is not. We need to change that up completely. But I love that. And it's so, and I thought, oh no, that's probably just a Māori thing. Like maybe us Pacific girls don't really need to live like that. But now it's so encouraging hearing that from you, because I'm like feeling inspired. Like maybe I should start doing that.
Yeah. So you should totally do it. Like it's, there's a app called Stardust. Like, a friend of mine just put me on it, that if your mates are on it, you can all track each other too. So you can be like, oh yeah, we're not catching up when you're in that state. We're going to catch up later when you're feeling good and I'm feeling good. That's a really good way of just tracking where you're at, tracking also, you know, what your cycle's doing, the length of it. You know, it can teach us so much about our own health, about how we're looking after ourselves. And I find the times that I push through, like if I'm in soil, in the part where I should be looking after myself, and I push through too hard, it can change the whole month, the whole future month. Like I'm just exhausted, continue to be exhausted, because I'm just starting, you know, my next week, of which I should be creative and everything, on just the back foot. I haven't looked after myself. I haven't done that self-care. So I start in my creative week extremely depleted, and then, you know, you're going through it again and it feels like you're just kind of crawling through your month. But if you can put in those things, and, you know, if you can put in, you know, I'm very lucky that I try and, you know, get a massage, or, you know, make sure I go to the moana. We have an awesome group of Pacifica sisters, and every Sunday morning we go to the moana at 7:00 in the morning. Like we meet there between 7 and 7:30. Even through winter, we were doing cold water therapy, and then, you know, having a chai or a hot coffee afterwards. But the Sundays that we all did show up to the moana, we realized, like, wow, we're actually showing up for ourselves. And it's rare and it's free, you know, but it's rare that we even put that as a priority. And when we did do it, we noticed that the rest of our week was just amazing. We walked into Monday with a space of calmness within us. And yeah, man, we deserve it. You know, we all work so hard. We need to really be listening to our cycles. Yeah.
I love that. And it's so refreshing listening to another Pacifica woman, or just another woman, talking about things like your period as something natural instead of something so ugly and negative. Because, you know, I often hear about that. I often hear people refer to it as Shark Week, or, you know, or bitchy week or something like that. So just hearing you talk about that self-care, because I'm in that stage right now in my life too, hearing about you talk about self-care, like with so much love and appreciation for your body and for yourself, your energy, your surroundings, for nature, I think that's really beautiful. So thank you. Oh. That's so lovely. I want to move into business now. Could you talk to us a little bit about some of your most important learning lessons from your business journey?
One of the most important lessons: find a mentor. I think that's probably a really good lesson. We have a business strategist that, you know, is outside of the company, not connected to Living Koko in a, you know, investment kind of way, but just half an hour of workshopping a decision that's been spiraling in my head for such a long time, they can just ground me with, an understanding of it. But find a business mentor that's in the ring, someone that has actually done business. There's a lot of people out there that are teaching workshops and courses on business development, but have never really had a big, dealt with a major business. Maybe they've had a side hustle, and a little bit of success on a side hustle, but that's a very big difference between a side hustle and a business that you've dropped everything for. Find people that have done that and have success in it. Also, a big learning for me was to celebrate even the smallest wins. As a business owner, you can go through like 20 emotions in 5 minutes. Hey, you can go from, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Holy moly, this is broken. Oh my gosh, everything is the worst. Life sucks. Just this whole roller coaster. Really look after yourself in that way and try and find a good mentor and put in those self-care things. Self-care is a huge part of my business, besides the fact that we're in the wellness sector. We do chocolate, but we're also talking about chocolate as a superfood and looking after yourself. But self-care within your business, I've seen so many people, the amount of stress that comes up within their business, how that affects their gut health, how that then affects their mental health. It's all connected in some way. So to really try and have that balance within your life, and a mentor can help with that. Yeah.
No, I love that. That's awesome. Thank you so much. And that's so true. Like, it is really good to have a supportive team. And part of that is the mentorship, the mentoring that you get to help drive your business into the billion-dollar business that it is very capable of being. So that's awesome. I love that. Hang on, I've got the question here, but I don't memorize it, but it's a really good question. What is one thing that Pacific people should know and appreciate about craft chocolate?
For me, it would be the amount of time, energy, and consideration that goes in every single step of making craft chocolate. Like, not just me on this end doing the roasting and the tempering and things like that, but the consideration of our people back home that are, just putting all the best intentions and the blessings into their lands and the hope and the prayers that these trees will grow. There's so much beautiful, gentle consideration that goes in every single step. I think that needs to be honored and supported. Yeah.
Mm. Okay, nice. And I have one final question. Close us off with one message that you'd like to share with the world.
Appreciate the small things. Yeah. Appreciate the smallest things in life and celebrate them, like within yourself and within your relationships too. I think sometimes we're looking for the big dazzling acts or the massive wins or the huge check that's going to come through within your business. But, celebrate that your staff come in and they're happy and you all get along and you enjoy working together and, just the small things, the small contracts that you get. Yeah, for me, it's appreciate the small things.
I love that. That is my final question, and that wraps up our podcast. And I'm actually going to think about the moon cycle thing a lot more. I was hoping to learn more about chocolate, but I'm more interested in the way that you live. I just think it's such a beautiful way. And thank you so much for sharing that. Like, I don't hear enough women talk about that enough. And I already know your business just sounds so much more beautiful. I already knew it was beautiful, but the fact that you as the owner care so much about nature, care about Indigenous people and, making sure that's, I feel like your brand definitely lives out that message. So it's really beautiful.
Oh, thank you. I think there's so much shame around our cycles. Yeah. There's so much shame growing up in it. And, is very kind of toxic masculine way of looking at things. But, you know, we're women, enjoy our femininity.
Yeah.
Enjoy,
100%.
like, and we're powerful too, hey? Like, our
Yes,
womb
we are. We're powerful.
womb
Yeah.
is a portal between like the spiritual and the physical. You know, that needs to be celebrated, hey?
Yeah, 100%. I really appreciate it. But we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for giving me your time. I don't want to keep you too long because I know you're busy, but I can't wait to share this. Thank you so much for those of you who are listening. But yeah, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it.
Thanks, sis. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for all the work you do too, like for our community.
Thank you for the work that you do. Really, really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. You take care and we'll keep in touch.
Okay. You too.
Okay.
Bye.